Hello, have another Talking Trisomy. Again, we're gathered together to talk all things trisomy. And today's really special. We have a soft member, Patty Walsh. We're going to talk about her wonderful daughter, Alana. It's just such a great opportunity to be together. Patty, we've had a chance to meet each other at the last two soft conferences. And so I'm just so excited that you get a chance to tell some stories, give some
Sure.
advice. Patty, how are things going? And tell us about just the state of your family. I know it's a new year, it's 2026. What's going on in your family?
Sure. Okay, so let me just do a little introduction. My name is Patty
Yeah.
Walsh. I have a 16-year-old daughter, Alana, who has trisomy 9 mosaic, and we live outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And my husband's name is Frank. He unfortunately could not join us today. He's at work. And I have a 19-year-old college student. His name is also Frank. For 2026, it's been a little crazy. Alana just turned 16 in December, so it was birthday, Christmas, and we are preparing to go to Disney World next week for a birthday / Christmas gift for both Alana and myself, because I just had a birthday too. So we will not talk about how old I am.
What a place to go, Disney World. That's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's
So
one of my
awesome.
favorites. So
Perfect. So thank you for giving us the background on your family. You guys are staying busy, getting all the parties out of the way at the end of the year, and now you're just moving forward. So let's talk a little bit about your family and just we can go kind of chronological. We can kind of go
sure.
back in time if you want to tell us some fun stories. And you're just one that having rubbed shoulders with you, and we have a contingent of trisomy 9 families, and we've got a great sense of people. So I know you guys are just ready with advice, and so I hope we can share plenty of advice for families if you're watching this and you just found out that your child has a diagnosis of trisomy 9 of the, trisomy 9 mosaic or partial. I hope you take heed to Patty's words, but Patty, tell us some stories about the early years.
Sure.
And tell us
So
what's,
let
yeah.
go ahead.
No, go
Okay, so
ahead, Patty.
I'll tell a little bit about our. Well, let me talk a little bit about how we found out, and I'll talk a little bit about just to give some context. So Alana, as I mentioned, Alana is 16. She just is getting braces, so she got her upper braces, so normal teenage stuff. We found out many years ago when I was expecting, I was considered high risk because of my age and a prior issue with a pregnancy. So I was high risk and I was being monitored pretty closely. And interestingly, what happened was the maternal fetal doctor, my MFT test came back funny, but it didn't come back clear. It just came back weird. And then the maternal fetal doctor and my primary OB couldn't decide what was wrong. One said it was trisomy 18. One was like, no, there's no way this baby has trisomy 18, blah, 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 blah. And when they were kind of arguing with each other, I was like, just do the amnio because I need to know. I'm a type A personality. I'm like, I have to know. So they did the amnio. And then about 2 weeks later, we got the phone call that she had trisomy 9 mosaic. And then that began a flurry of visiting with the genetic doctor, trying to figure out what does this mean, because we had no idea what trisomy 9 was. No, I have a family friend who has a sibling with Down syndrome, but other than that, I had no idea. And what does this mean? And the doctors were talking about, oh, she's going to be in the NICU and you're going to have to make decisions and this baby will never walk and this kid is never going to talk and blah, 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 blah. And I will say, of all the things they said in the beginning, the only thing that really came true was they said I would have to have a C-section because trisomy babies apparently have a hard time with the delivery because they decelerate with the heart rate. So that turned out to be true. I did have to have but I had to have an emergency C-section at 37 weeks. And she was very small when she first came out. But they kept telling us, oh, she's going to be small. She's going to be small. And just to give some context, she's now 5 feet, 5 inches tall and is not done growing. So that's kind of a misnomer. They also said she wouldn't talk, and she never, ever, ever stops talking. She didn't talk. Yeah, Nick has met Alana, and everybody knows her from her voice. She talks and talks and talks. So I just want to say in the beginning, it was very it was just a mess. And like I said, I'm a type A personality. I wanted to know everything. We wanted to be prepared. And that was even hard getting information because the doctors were giving us outdated information. They didn't know anything. And we're just like, all right. And they're like, well, we don't know what's going to happen. And you're going to have to make decisions. And what do you want to do? And blah, 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 blah. So once we said we're having this baby, then it became, okay, you're going to the doctor once a week, sometimes twice a week. And all the medical, I see a lot of people, it was the monitoring. And then there's the paranoia of, well, what happens when this baby's out? Because yeah, ultrasounds can tell you some things, but they don't tell you everything. And they don't know what's going to happen. And they're making all these dire predictions of she's going to be in the NICU for months. And then she comes out and so I had an emergency C-section. My husband and my mother, who is a nurse who has was a nursery nurse for a while. They were there. They went with the baby to the NICU. And apparently the NICU nurse was mad that they got called for her because she was doing, I guess, pretty well, which was kind of weird. And then I didn't see her for about 12 hours after the C-section. So I always tell parents now, if you know ahead of time, make sure you tell them you want to see the baby, because I wear glasses and contacts. I'm very blind and you can't wear them in the OR. And they like held the baby up from 15 feet. I can't see the baby. Oh, so the hospital was a whole nother experience. But she ended up getting discharged from the NICU in 12 hours. And then the neonatologist came in and he handed me information from 1983 that was like, oh, these babies are going to die. Okay. So we were a little paranoid. We were like, what do you mean? This is from 1983. So then we started researching and we came upon Soft and we came upon Unique, which is another group. And we learned more and more like, okay, the doctor doesn't know what he's doing. She was able to come home from the hospital. She was born Wednesday at 2:48 a.m. She came home Friday afternoon, which is almost unheard of she came home. It was freezing cold and snowing, but she came home and she has done remarkably well. She's only been inpatient hospitalized 3 times in 16 years. So we've been very lucky that way. She's been very healthy. We've avoided some of the standard trisomy 9 things, but we've also experienced a lot of them. So she has scoliosis and she wears glasses and she has some asymmetry. So we've had a lot of that. But I will say I was happy to know. It was very, very hard though, because once you find out, you start searching on the internet and there's only, at the time, there was very little detail. Obviously this was 17 years ago. So there wasn't as much. Yes, we found Soft and we found some other things. There wasn't a lot of detail. There wasn't a lot to know. The genetics doctor is like, well, I've seen one case and it was terrible and the child had all these issues and so you're like, all right, now what? So it was a lot. But then I remember insisting that I see the baby because she's in the NICU. I'm like, I want to go see my baby. And I go down to the NICU and if you have ever been to a NICU, there's like the little isolette. So I'm expecting my baby to be in the full thing where you can barely touch her with all these wires. And they pointed to the baby who was laying in the warmer, sucking on a pacifier with no wires, nothing. And I'm just sitting there, are you sure that's mine? And they're like, yes, that's yours. So we had this really weird, I don't want to say weird, but it was almost like, but I was sitting there kind of dumbfounded, like, okay. And I'm like, can I touch her? They're like, sure. Okay. So Alana has always been, it's funny because she loves unicorns and she always has. And she's like a unicorn in some ways, that they'll tell us something will happen. They're like, oh, she'll be in the NICU for weeks. And then Alana's like, nope, I'm getting out of here. And I'm getting out of here in 12 months. The therapist and all will be like, oh, get her this toy. This will help her. Hates it. Doesn't want to cooperate. Like, she is very determined and she'll do things in her own way. Her early intervention PT was like, she won't crawl and she's got to crawl. And she was just like, I'm going to walk. I want to chase my brother around. Her brother is 3.5 years older than her. And I do think that was somewhat of a motivator when she was a baby to be like, oh, well, he's up and doing stuff. I want to go see I want to see what he's doing. She always wanted to be up. She's always been very curious and she's always wanted to watch, like she loves people and watch people. And she loved lights and she loved the color red from early age. But I mean, that was kind of the beginning. So we have this, so we go home from the hospital with this baby that we're like, okay. And then you start going to the doctors. And I think one of the hardest parts for me, and this is partially my personality, but I think this is a lot of us have had this problem, is the doctors will tell you one thing and they'll be like, oh, she's not going to walk, she's not going to talk, she's not going to do this. And then your child does that. And you're like, okay. And so the doctors don't know what to tell you. And some of the doctors, I will say, we counted once that she had like 9 specialists. And of the 9 specialists, only one had ever seen another trisomy 9 child. So you have to kind of think when you're going, you have to think to yourself, okay, this doctor may have never seen this before. So I'm not sure, like, I'm going to take what he says, I'm going to take what he or she says, but I'm also going to realize they may not know. And then it's complicated by there's the trisomy 9 piece, and then and she has the mosaic form, and then there's the genetic piece. So like sometimes she'll have a medical issue where it's like, is this trisomy 9 or is this genetics? Like she has ADHD. Okay, well, a lot of trisomy 9 kids have that, but it also runs in both of our families. So you're like, meh. So I think there is this battle in the beginning of, you're so focused on the doctors told you all these negative things. So you're like, oh, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And then you're seeing your child do all these things. And you're like, oh, well, this is great. She can do this. And you're like, okay. And then you go to these doctors and you want answers because you want answers. But the doctors are like, we can't give you answers. Okay. Okay. This is interesting. And coming to terms with that can be hard, and accepting that the doctors aren't going to give you go into these doctor's appointments with a list of questions. And half the time the doctor's like, well, I don't know. Maybe something. And you're just like, oh, this is not helpful. So it was interesting. We are also privileged, and I say this all the time to people. We are very privileged that we live right outside Philadelphia. And in the Philadelphia area, there are multiple children's hospitals. So we have CHOP, which a lot of people are familiar with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We have Nemours in Wilmington. We have St. Christopher's in Philadelphia. There's also a Shriners Hospital here. We are very, very fortunate that within 45 minutes of my house are all 4 of those hospitals. Not everybody has that. So like if I go to a doctor and I don't like them, I can go change to another doctor. Or if the wait list at CHOP is 2 years and the wait list at Nemours is 3 months, I can go to Nemours, and we are willing to travel. I know there are a lot of people who like all their care in one spot. I tend to be more, if I can get the right service and the right provider, I don't care if I have.
It seems fairly common. I mean, just that doctors this might be their only trisomy 9 patient, or maybe they've, unless they've been doing this for a while, just sheer statistically speaking, with the rarity of some of these conditions. So what did you do? I was talking to another mom last week, and they got the advice early on that they kind of had to become the expert for that condition.
Yes.
In their neck of the woods, they're pretty unique. So how do you, did that,
So what
go ahead.
What we did, so I'm going to preface this with, my mother has a medical background. I have a brother who is a medical doctor, and my husband is a nurse. So we have some medical people, and we have some inside information on how to navigate the system. So I will say that first. But what we did is we found the Unique has a pamphlet about trisomy 9M. And we found that pamphlet and we printed that out at the time, and we took it to every doctor appointment we went to, and we're like, here's some information. And it was so funny because the one doctor was like, can I keep this? And we're like, yeah, this is what we brought it for. So some of the doctors were really receptive. And I always tell new parents, and I would say this to anybody, get a pediatrician who is going to listen to you. Like our pediatrician has been great. He listens to us. If I call him and say, hey, we were at Soft and they recommended at the medical clinics and they recommended this, he'll be like, I agree with that. I'll do that. Like he trusts us to bring up issues, and finding a doctor that you like trust and that's willing to listen to you. And when we say, hey, we go on to like social media or whatever and be like, hey, I'm having this problem, and another parent says this worked for us. Having a doctor that will take that word rather than thinking they're the expert is really helpful, because some doctors are a little more, well, I know what I'm doing, and you don't listen, because we've had one doctor that, I'm not going to say I fired the doctor, but I refused to go back to them because they weren't considering the trisomy 9 as part of the problem. They're just like, well, all kids do this. I'm like, well, no, this is a documented trisomy 9 problem. I want to talk. And she just dismissed me. And I'm like, oh, never going back to her. So you kind of have to get the doctors that are willing to work with you. And you learn, I wouldn't say I'm super assertive, but you also learn that the medical people don't know everything. And you can, especially, like I said, we are in an area where this is possible. If I don't like one doctor, I don't feel they're listening to me, I have choices. Not everybody is in that position. So I feel bad for, like, I've gotten second opinions or I've changed doctors when I haven't liked somebody. We've just made sure to do that. So and it's hard because you're trained that the doctors know. You go to the doctor, you tell the doctor what the problem is, and the doctor tells you how to fix it.
Right.
Well, trisomy kids can't. There may not be a fix for everybody, and the doctor may have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. It seems to me like it's like, and that's kind of, we have a phrase, right? Our mission is to support families and change the narrative. That narrative ultimately needs to change the practice. Dr. Carey said that to me the other day. I said, oh, I like that phrase, changing the
Yes,
practice.
true.
So a collaborative approach, it doesn't necessarily always bother us that you might not know all the answers, but let's go find someone that does, or let's go get a second opinion, or let's talk to other families, and bring all the information back. And so we're just, the more I hear it, the more it sounds like to me, Patty, is just you want information and you want to be heard and you want Alana to be seen as who she is and what, and not by some characteristics of just the
Well,
trisomy
you
9 or
want her
just
to be
this.
treated for the problem, not for the disorder.
Yeah.
And my
Love it.
husband worked. My husband is a nurse, and he works with adult patients. And it's really interesting that we've heard all these horror stories where, when it comes to a child, sometimes the medical people will be like, "Oh, well, don't pursue this treatment. We're not going to do this treatment because this child has this." But if it's a 95-year-old with advanced dementia, they'll do whatever they want. And you're kind of like, "What is wrong with this picture? Why
Right.
is anything done for somebody in it, like, this doesn't make any sense. There should be a better conversation around some of these decisions."
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, it does. I think to me, it somewhat sums around the quality of life for this perceived notion of what's value, and not to open up that Pandora's box, but I think that's the vibe I get from parents too. It's like, you don't judge the situation. Treat her for what she has, and let's go and let's make a plan and let's make, you know, how, tell us a bit, maybe like, we kind of talked a little bit about the early days. Talk about maybe the preschool, or tell us some more about Alana's
so
journey.
yeah, let me talk. The one thing I will say is the thing that really helped us is, so Lana got out of the hospital fast, and we signed up for our state's early intervention program. And they came to our house when she was 3 weeks old. So she started with PT real early. And I think that helped with sitting up and walking and doing all of that. And like, she sat up around 7 or 8 months by herself. She walked at about 18 months, which is high end of normal, we were told. So some of that stuff was really helpful. So we signed up for early intervention early, and obviously it's free in most states. That was a big thing. We also made the decision, knowing that speaking was going to be an issue. We made the decision early on to get supplemental private speech therapy in addition to what early intervention paid. So she went to speech therapy twice a week with early intervention and once a week with a private therapist from the time she was about 18 months old. So we sent her to speech. Like, we made decisions along the way in terms of, this isn't, being able to speak is a critical skill. We want her to be able to do this. So, and like, we are also fortunate, and we can talk about this a little more. We are both able to work full time. So we can talk about that a little. But we would make decisions. Okay, they might say, have her have these therapies. And sometimes we'd have to say, well, realistically, with our schedule, we have another child we have to pay attention to. This is the one we want to focus on now. So when she was younger, she had speech therapy. And then now she has PT because she has some gait issues and different things. But we made conscious decisions along the way. So when she was about 2, her early intervention worker said there was a slot open at a mixed preschool daycare. So we looked at that, and we sent her 3 full days a week. I think she went 3 full days a week to a daycare it was like a preschool / daycare. And there were, I think, three kids with various diagnoses and 10 or 12 neurotypical kids. And she didn't talk at the time, and the teacher also knew sign. So we did a little bit of pictures and a little bit of sign, and she loved it. After the initial adjustment, she loved it. And she went there for about 18 months. And when she was 3.5, she switched to, we have in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, so that's the Catholic, for those who it's like the group that oversees the Catholic churches. There are I think it's three, there might be four special education schools. So they have a couple special education schools. So when she was 3.5, we toured the one special education school, which was called Our Lady of Confidence. It was recommended by her developmental pediatrician at the time. We loved it. It was a great setting. She started there when she was 3.5, and she stayed there until she was 14. She graduated from like what would be the equivalent of, say, 8th grade. So she went there. She loved it. We loved it. We did private pay for it because our school district's placement we didn't like and we didn't agree with. And it was, for private placements, it was very, very inexpensive, especially if you were Catholic. So we decided that we were going to pay for that rather than fight the school district placement, because it was very inexpensive. It was a small classroom with a teacher and 2 aides and focus on independent. We loved it. So we loved her school. It was great. So she did that. She also went to summer camp her school did not have a summer program. She went to a summer camp that is through what's called Variety Club, which is a charitable organization that does a lot for individuals with disabilities. And here in the Philadelphia suburbs, they have it's probably 100-acre campus. They have a pool. They have she went there for summer camp, and they usually do an 8-week day camp. She also went to another one at one point during COVID, but she went to this day camp, and then Variety. She's been to the day camp. They also do, which is the best thing ever, toward the end of COVID, Variety offered what's called Saturday day camp. So Saturday day camp is basically respite, because we don't get a lot of respite in Pennsylvania. We pay, and for 6 hours, she goes to Saturday day camp and has fun with all her little friends and does activities and has a grand old time. And we get to do whatever it is we want to do, if it's a Saturday, or run errands without her or whatever. So she does that. She also plays on a challenger baseball team. She is currently playing on the unified bocce team at her school, which has been interesting. But like I said, we have some resources here that aren't, like, if you live in the middle of, say, Kansas, you're not necessarily going to have a variety club. You're not necessarily going to have access to some of the things we have.
Yeah, it does bring a lot of options to the table. And I think what I hear from you, Patty, is like you just have to explore what's around you, what's going on,
Yes.
find ways that will
And
benefit. Yeah, go ahead.
one of the things that really is helpful, and I would say this to everybody, is by pure luck, I ran into a local parent. I was at something for my son, and I started talking to this other parent, and somehow it came up that we both had kids with disabilities. So then we were able to talk to each other about different, like, oh, well, do you know about this? Do you know about that? And I kind of you learn about things from the other local parents. And I tell all new parents, or parents who are struggling, find a local parent, especially if it's a local parent who's got a kid a little older than you, because that's how you're going to hear sometimes about things and how your state's process works. Because obviously in the US, every state has different systems for. In Pennsylvania, we have secondary MA is not contingent for disabled children, is not contingent on parents' income, where a lot of states don't have that. So, like, we're fortunate to have that. And there's different things that you learn from the other parents. And that's another reason why I'm always like, I will help the younger parents, because I remember other parents have helped me. And it is isolating. And a lot of things for kids with disabilities are not public knowledge. They're not broad. Some places you really have to fight to get information or to get the services you need. We've been pretty lucky, but obviously we're also in the position where we could afford to pay for the private school that we liked. We do pay for camp. Now she goes to extended. She switched to the public high school when she got out of what was the equivalent of 8th grade. Now she's in the public high school. She's in 10th grade. So she goes to 5 weeks of extended and then usually 3 weeks at her variety camp that we pay for. So, and it's a lot. And I think the thing that we've been fortunate with too is my husband and I can both work. And I know that's not possible for everybody. I've been lucky that I have a fairly flexible job. I've had great bosses who've been very understanding. If I take, like today, I'm taking my lunch break to be here and I'll just work a little later. If I have to sign in, like if Alana has a crisis and I have to go, I can make up time later. Like I've been very fortunate that way. I know not everybody has that. And my husband works 3 days a week, including weekends. So when Alana was younger, he worked a lot of weekends so that somebody was available to help with some of the stuff. Um, and and I also have family in the area who are helpful. Not, but we try not to abuse that because if there's an emergency,
Yeah.
we want to be able to say we want to save some of that for the emergencies. Like when she has to have jaw surgery, probably next summer, I need to be like, hey, can my sister, the teacher, help? Can my mother, And my parents are not. My parents are helpful, but my parents are also I mean, my parents are getting up there in age and it's not they're relatively healthy, thank God, but you have to figure out what you're gonna do. And her brother can help a little bit, not fully, but he helps sometimes.
It's so nice of you to always think to give back. You feel like you've been empowered by the generation or the parents ahead of you and say, "Man, I just want to give back." I know that's what you were telling me offline, with
Yes.
preparing for this
So
interview.
we
That's just something you just is deep in your heart. Tell me more.
Yeah, so we wanted to it was so overwhelming in the beginning and it was so confusing. And then I started slowly we found Unique and I found Gabby, who's another soft parent. And the first time we went to soft, it was in Norfolk, Virginia, and Alana was 3. And there's a picture somewhere of there were only 4, I think there were 4 or 5 trisomy 9 families there. And there were 2 parents I think it's 2 there was one who was our age, who's Lana's age, one who's older who I'm still friends with. Like, so some of the older parents, Kathleen Wank has really been helpful with Anne Marie. I don't know if you know them. There's some families that have really been helpful to us over the years. And then when she was 3 the first South Conference, and the following year, a group of trisomy 9 parents in Chicago had a conference. And it ended up there was like 30 parents who came because we all found out about it. And we were like, I said to my husband, like, we're going. We're not even arguing. We're going. And he's like, oh, okay. So we've been to a couple of different events. So we've been able to connect with people. And when we started going to events, Alana was little and I was the one asking 1,000 questions because that's part of my personality. Or my son would say, you cross-examine everybody, but okay, fine. But because you would run to get questions and then you end up getting close to the parents of the kids who are your kids' age because you're all going through the same thing. And then now, like this year when we were at Soft, I made sure it was a lot of younger people. A lot is one of the older people. So I'm like, hey, I'm so and so, and my child has this, and the purple lanyards and were godsend 2 years ago. Like, I'm so and so, and if you have questions, let me know. I've been where you are. It's confusing, and especially when you go to the Soft conference for the first time, it's like I'm not sure what I'm doing here. It's kind of confused. I won't say it's confusing, but it's a little overwhelming. You're like, oh, everybody in this room knows what I'm talking about. This is fabulous.
Yep.
So
You don't
like I said, I swore I would help people. I tried to be that way because it's overwhelming. The medical system, even just negotiating the medical system. I was a medical secretary in college. My husband is my mother, like one of my closest friends. People don't realize how hard the medical system can be to get through, and just different things that go on, and finding the right people and the insurance and getting the right services, and just knowing. I was talking to somebody at the last soft conference. Alana has a medical stroller and they're like, how did you get that? She walks. I'm like, well, this is where we went and this is who we talked to and this is the process of how you get that. Just a lot of things in the disability world are more complicated than they need to be. And just having someone who can say to you, well, do this and this helps because you're overwhelmed. And if you have a child who's in and out of the hospitals, it can be even more overwhelming. We've been fortunate. Like I said, Alana has only been hospitalized, I think 3 times overnight, 3 times, and it's been sporadic. And then, so we've been fortunate that way. We also, because of the multiple people with medical background, we kind of know how to navigate around some of the system problems that, you hate to say that, but unfortunately the system is so overwhelmed with everybody. And COVID did a lot of, COVID brought a lot of change to the system and not necessarily in a good way. So that's one thing where I always try to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is what you do. You ask for this and you do this.
It's almost like the order of operations, right? Like you can unlock
Yes.
these resources and tools if you just go get permission from mom, then dad, like it's just the whole order of operations there type of thing. So great advice there. Um, what emotions do you think new parents aren't always told to expect? Let's talk about advice when it comes to emotions or feelings
So,
that you could
yes,
share for others.
I think, yeah, the first thing that usually happens, hold on, let me see. My husband is texting me. Okay, good. The thing initially, it's very much shock. There's this shock of, oh my God, what is this? What am I going to, how do I handle this? Then there's the other problem, the problem that happens is you're in shock and you're like, huh, what now? And you're kind of confused. And at least in our situation, because of, and I don't really want to get into the politics of it, but a lot of times you're going to be told you have a week or two to make a decision. And we want you to make a decision. And sometimes they will pressure you to go one way. And you have to kind of sit and think, okay, just give me a minute to process this. Let me think. And I always say, whatever decision people make, be comfortable with it, and that's your decision to make. Everybody needs to make that decision for themselves. I can't tell you what to do. No one else can tell you what to do. But once there's the initial diagnosis, there's that comes into play. The doctors are pushing you to make decisions, and you're just like, I'm not even sure what the heck is going to happen here, and you're telling me this. Then you're in a situation where, so once the shock wears off, and you're like, okay, we've made some decisions. Then you're like, okay, what's going to happen next? Because they're ordering, at least for my standpoint, as somebody who was pregnant and probably 20, 21 weeks when all this went down. It was, you need a fetal echo, you need this, you need that, you need to be going to this doctor, you need to be going here. Like, you're like, okay, and what does this mean? And what does that mean? And they're telling you this, and you're just kind of like, okay. And then you're trying to figure out there's the confusion of, well, the doctors are telling me this child's going to be severely disabled. Am I going to be able to work? Because I was working full time at the time. And for my first child, I literally worked up until the day before he was born, went back 3 months later, and it was fine. You're like, well, what does this mean? Because you're thinking, a lot of times you're thinking, okay, this baby and what's this baby's health going to be? Then you're thinking, well, how are we going to cope with this? And what are we going to do in different scenarios? Because they can't predict. Like they were telling us, well, it could be NICU for weeks. So you're like, all right, well, do I take maternity leave as soon as this baby? What do I do? Can I work? Can I not? Can we, there's all that. Then it's so hard because you're so upset and you're so like confused and you're like, why me? There's a lot of why me? Why am I the person who has to deal with this? And I know for me, my sister-in-law was pregnant at the same time and she was expecting 2 months later and she turned down all the tests. And I'm just sitting there like, you just found out this baby has a serious problem and you're going to turn down okay. Like, okay, great. Or you have to go, like there's that. And a lot of times you'll have friends who are pregnant, whatever. And so you're trying to be like, all right. I mean, there was a point where I couldn't even talk about it in public. I'm like, I can't talk to anybody about this. I told my boss and I told one of my coworkers, nobody else knew. And luckily my team, but like, I couldn't talk about it. And even after Alana was born, it was hard to talk about it. Just that she has some medical issues. And that's, it's hard because you don't want to necessarily, at least for me, there's situations where I don't want to be breaking down and trying to explain this because I'm still processing what is going on here and I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't want to be like, it's hard. It was hard. It was very hard. It's very confusing. But then you get to the point where you're like, okay. So then I'm like, all right, this baby's doing fine. I have to go to the doctor every week. Fine. They keep telling me it's fine. Okay. We'll worry about right now. Everything is stable. I'm going to worry about getting my work done, paying attention to my other child, because if this child's in the NICU, I got to worry about him because he's going to want attention and he's going to, he was 3.5. Every kid, when their sibling comes, it's a problem, let alone your sibling is going to have problems and you're not going to know. So that was a whole nother, we were just trying to like straighten everything out and be like, okay. So then you get into this like holding pattern. Okay, I'm in this holding pattern until this baby comes out because they'll tell you, well, we can do the ultrasound and it looks like this, but we won't really know until they come out. And in our experience, all the dire predictions that were made when they were doing all these tests didn't come true. She comes out and she's doing fine. So you're like, huh? Oh, what? Okay, now we're going to have to reevaluate. And I am very much a planner. So this uncertainty and so like, okay, so now she's out and she's coming home and I get 3 months off. And then we think, okay, what are we doing? You're trying to figure all that out. But it's a lot of confusion in the beginning. It's a lot of shock. It's like a whirlwind because there'll be times where you're okay or times where you're like, I'm going to focus on something else. Then there's times where you'll be sitting there and something will trigger you, or your sister will make a statement, or your friend will say something, and you're just like, oh, I can't, that becomes an issue. And who do you tell and who don't you tell? And how do you want to explain it to people? And what do you want to say? It becomes a lot. But I always tell parents, just, once you're over the shock, you just have to try and stay calm and try not to compare to anything. And it's really hard because we're told, well, your child is supposed to do this at this age and your child is supposed to do this. And now they're like, no, your child is going to have something nobody's ever heard of. And we can't tell you what's going to happen, or we're going to predict these terrible things. Oh, thanks. And you have all the pregnancy hormones too. If you find out in utero, you have all the pregnancy hormones. So you're just like, there were days where I would just go to work and be like, I'm just going to focus on work. We'll talk about this later. We'll think about this at the next doctor's appointment. I also would say, and this goes both when you first find out and all along, we always try to have either both parents or mom and grandmom or so, two people at doctor's appointments, especially in the beginning, because you're so overwhelmed and you're trying to focus on this baby, and the doctors might be telling you because they will have you go to a lot of specialists because they have to look out for certain things. And like I can't tell you how many times my husband and I have gone to the doctors with her and we've each come out with a separate idea. So well, she said this. No, they said this. Okay, what are we doing here? So you do have to sometimes have a second person. It really does help to have a second person with you and to write your questions down before you go in. Because if you write your questions down, because you're talking to the doctors and I always say, go with a written list and no, this is what I want to cover. And because in today's medical world, doctors are rushing through appointments and I only have this amount of time and you may not get everything covered. So that's been helpful. And know what to look out for. So like trisomy 9 kids have a history of scoliosis and it usually presents early. So learning all that early is really helpful in terms of being able to monitor. Like Alana's been monitored for scoliosis since she was really little. She developed it at 4.5. She had to have a brace at 6. Now she just wears her brace at night, like to know what to look out for. Because if you can treat some of these things early, it will make your life imminently easier. We knew she was at risk for reflux. We made sure when we fed her in the beginning that she was always up for the first half hour after she ate, so she wouldn't silently aspirate. It's hard to keep track of all of that, but if you can figure out these are the most common things, feeding tube or potential trach or heart surgery. Okay, I got to go to heart surgery and cardiology. It's kind of funny. I'm going to say this here. Cardiology at CHOP has a very interesting reputation and they are always behind. And we were there one day for 5 hours with a 6-month-old waiting to see a doctor that we had a personal connection to. And it was just like, sometimes you have to go to these specialty appointments to do this. And it's just a lot to deal with. I don't know that I just talked a lot about the feelings, but it can be overwhelming. And you just have to sometimes say, today, I'm just not going to think about it. And I'm going to see what I can do. And there are times where we go like minute by minute in our house. Okay, Alana's having a meltdown. Okay. Put her in her room. I'm going to go over there. Or, okay, today we don't have any doctor's appointments. It's going to be a normal day. Let's just try and be normal. Let's enjoy the baby stage. I did not enjoy the baby stage because I was too busy worried about how she was doing and what doctor we were going to. And I knew she was my last child. So I always tell people, enjoy the baby stage. Got to enjoy that while you can instead of thinking about all the what ifs, because you will drive yourself crazy.
I mean, those are some great advice. The having two people at an appointment kind of allows your own two opinions, right? Two different thoughts come to mind, some feedback, questions written down, and enjoying the stages. You said baby stage, but enjoying the stages and finding ways to, worry when you need to worry and kind of let it go when you can. Those are some great pieces of advice. Based on what you've been sharing, Alana's grown a lot. Alana's, done great things.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier she does talk a lot. remember meeting her first time at breakfast, and you guys were she was just going on. And when she sees her fellow friends at the soft conference, man, she lights up, and they've got to show toys, and they go across the, it's just the most wonderful, just adorable, whatever adjective you want to use, it fits where it just puts a smile on everyone's face. And she lights up the room with many of these other
She is
kids
very
do
much
the
a people
same.
person.
Yep.
Yes, and she's a people person, and she loves people, and she also loves attention, and especially adult attention, but I think that's from starting at early intervention at 3 weeks old and always having adults pay attention to you. I think she loves attention, she loves people, she loves to talk, she loves to show you her stuff. She's very much a character in terms of personality. Um, so I think she'll latch on to people. Like, she loves Lizzie, who from Soft. She loves
Yes.
Lizzie. Like, oh, where's Lizzie? Where's Lizzie? And I know she will be Alana will, unfortunately, we can't come to the conference this year, but hopefully we'll be able to make it in succeeding years, but we'll get there. But she loves coming to the conference. She loves talking to people, but she's also pretty good now as she's gotten older about when she's had enough. You can tell she's had enough. You're like, okay, downtime. We're going to go somewhere quiet, or we're going to go back to the room with the iPad if we're at the conference, or you need some downtime. So she's gotten better at regulating stuff. She's really good about now starting to talk about when her ADHD medicine wears off. She'll say, I think it's time for my medicine, which you wouldn't think. And there's times, and I think this is what, for any parent who has to job with this, there are times where they do things that are normal child things. Like, there were times when she was little where she would go over and like grab something from her brother, or go over and hip check him. And like, they do normal things sometimes, and you forget about that because you're so focused on where are they behind? What are they working on? What are we doing? They want us to do these exercises all the time, blah, 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 blah. But there are times where they do normal things. Like, Alana is 16, and the teenage attitude, like, I hate you. Like, I get teenage attitude all the time. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. Attitude. Where that's ugly. I'm like, okay, whatever. But the kids do normal things, but you sometimes get so sucked into, this is the child with this problem and this, you don't think about the normal things. And we tell our son, he's 19 now, when she gets on his nerves, and he's like, she's on my nerves. I'm like, Frank, she would be on your nerves if she didn't have trisomy 9. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, mom's sister gets on her nerves, dad's sister gets on his nerves, and we're adults. Like, this is normal sibling behavior. The trisomy 9 might add a little difference in the way she interacts with you, but your siblings always get on your nerves. Just accept it and move on.
That's fact. As someone, I can attest to that. Tell me a little bit about, as from the parent perspective, how you personally have grown. You've had to, when I talk to other parents, they talk about just the having to speak on behalf of their child, especially when they're younger, and that might change them. I know being a lawyer and all of those things, but what has it changed for you as a person, walking this path?
I think, number one, yes, it has definitely changed. I would say I am definitely a little more like, no is a complete sentence. I'm less of a people pleaser in some ways, and more inclined to be like, okay, or to say no to things where in the past I might have always agreed. Do you just have to think, well, you want to have a party and you want to start at 8 o'clock at night, and Alana's a morning person? No. I will say, I always joke that I need a secretary, because I feel like I constantly am like, okay, when is she due for this? When is this appointment? What is this? And this is going to sound terrible, but as the mother, you're always the default parent. So it's like, the school calls me, the school sends me stuff, the nurse calls me, they email me. You're like, okay, he works 3 days a week and I work 5. Could you let dad do some of it? But it's also made me more grateful for some of my friends, because I have some really good friends who have been very supportive, and my family has been very supportive in their own ways, some more than others. But I think it does make you more grateful for the little things in life, because Alana enjoys little things in life that we forget as adults, and you're so busy working and doing all your other things, you forget some of the little things, and to stop and take time to be like, oh, yeah, this is exciting. She's happy to have her chicken nuggets and sit and play with her Barbies. Or, I mean, I could do without watching Beauty and the Beast 1,000 times a month, but it is what it is. It's what it is. So yeah, and I think it's made me Go ahead.
Finish your thought, but I was just going to ask you more questions about wisdom that you could pass on to other parents. If you had that thought, if you still have it, feel
Okay.
free to end it.
So what I would say to other parents is trust yourself, because and I think I mentioned this before, but we're used to going to the doctor and the doctor makes the decision. Know that you can question the doctors, and you're going to have to make decisions sometimes that the doctors may, it's not that they may not agree with it, but they may be leaning another way or whatever. Like, trust yourself, know that you know your child best. And sometimes, because this is where, and I think this is I'm going to use this example. When Alana was evaluated in Pennsylvania, there's early intervention, then there's 3 to 5. When she was evaluated for 3 to 5, the evaluations were, it was brutal, because they're writing all this stuff about how she can't do this, she can't do that, she can't do that. And some of those educational evaluations are brutal. But I know my child, and just because she didn't do something the day they were observing her doesn't mean she can't do something or she couldn't possibly do that. So know that just because there may be an evaluation, and they can be depressing to read. I mean, the one evaluation, I was like, this is ridiculous. And it's like, okay, but you know your child best, and you know what's going to work best. And yes, the medical professionals will tell you different things, or the education professionals will tell you different things. But sometimes you have to step up and say no. And I know one of the things that we stepped up and said, when she was eligible for school, they wanted to put Alana in a lunch period with 200 regular kindergartners. And I was like, no, because she's watching all the people. She'll get distracted. She'll never eat. Then it'll be a problem. Like, you know what your child is best for. And for us, that's when we chose to keep her at her private Catholic school, because we knew the Catholic school was more supportive for her and that was better. And that overall, that type of inclusion for Alana would be a disaster at that time. And we knew that. And I was very confident in that. And when the school people, when the 3 to 5 people wanted her to go to kindergarten when she was eligible, yet she was eligible for another year of 3 to 5. I'm like, she's getting another year of 3 to 5. And they were kind of, I had to argue a little bit with them about it. I'm like, no, I know my rights to have her in there. She needs this. I'm not sending her to kindergarten. And then you have to get a little more comfortable knowing I know what's best for my child, even if all these people are doing it. And IEP meetings are hard. And that is one of the things in all the special needs groups I'm in terms of kids and all. A lot of parents, IEP meetings are always hard, because you've got to step up, and you've got all these people around, and you're the one arguing for your child. And then you've got all these school people saying whatever. I think going into the IEP meeting that you know your child best, and you see them all the time, and that's just their opinion or what they think. And that took a little while to get to that point, even with being trained as a lawyer and lawyer background, that the IEP thing can be really hard. And some of the school challenges.
Was there anything specific that helped you, or was it just kind of trial and error? Like, you just had to do it? Like, what was there any specific things that helped you follow that
Some of it was
instinct?
trial and error. Some of it was remembering, some of it is I'm the parent here. I spend more time with her. Like, for the IEP, it's I spend more time with her than you all do. And you only see a certain thing in the beginning. And then it was also, you are only looking at this from the educational piece. I see all of it. So you have to think, okay, this is the educational piece. But you also have to kind of talk to other parents and know, okay, well, this person can be, we had something. My husband was in the room with Alana, and he left, and I was having a thing out with him. He's like, "Uh-oh, you're going all lawyer mode on me." Like, well, the person was saying stuff that wasn't necessarily appropriate, so I'm going to go lawyer mode. And I'm fortunate to have that. I have that background, but I'm not a special ed attorney, so obviously I don't know all the rules. So, but you're just sometimes you have to be no, this is what's going to happen, and stick to your guns. And it's hard because we're taught that the professionals know what they're doing. You should be deferring to the medical professionals or the educational professionals. But sometimes no, I'm not doing that, or this is not appropriate.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to one of the leading experts that wrote the article about trisomy 18 and 13, and you know, acknowledging that incompatible with life isn't appropriate. And she talked about her as a physician, that there's biases, especially if, and I think the same thing would be with educators. If you only see the kids in certain instances, I think of my kids' teachers. I got a 4th grader. They only know her from the 4th grade classroom. They don't know about her in her dance or this and that. So you get this bias on wherever you're at, whether you're with them a lot or like a physician, probably very few minutes here and there, that there's moments of bias. And so, yeah, as a parent, you just please listen to me. Let's come to the conclusion on this. I'd like to hear your ideas. Please listen to my ideas. I think you got a great point of just kind of standing your ground at times and saying, let's find the solution here. Um, what kind of misconceptions are out there or that you would like to speak to when it comes to the misconceptions of trisomy 9, trisomy maybe is in a general sense or, you know,
Okay. So I think the biggest issue is all trisomy, no matter which one it is, they're all different and every kid is different. So even there is another, and I use this example and I don't think I won't say the name. There is another trisomy 9M child who was literally born the exact same day, exact same year as Alana. And she does not speak. But she walks and stuff. Like she's very similar to Alana, but there's things she doesn't do. And just everybody's different. And you can have kids born on the exact same day who have totally different, it's totally different. And it's hard because as a parent, you want to have kind of an idea of, well, this is when this is going to happen. Because they tell us, like with your neurotypical child, they tell you, expect them to walk here, expect them to do this. But with the trisomy kids, that doesn't happen. And they do things at weird times and they don't do things in order. And then the therapists get frustrated that, well, she's not doing this in order. And I'm like, I don't care if she's not doing it in order. If she gets to walking, she gets to walking. Who cares? So I do think you have to, and that is really hard. It's taken me a long time to accept that the doctors don't have the answers, that things are not linear. That's not the standard up and down. And that's taken a long time to get to. And I think there's also this misconception that there's the incompatibility with life. There's that every trisomy kid is going to eventually die by the time they're a certain age. That is not true. Every kid has different medical needs and medical issues. And if you manage, my husband wanted me to say this, if you look at the actual medical issue versus the diagnosis, you should be able to just address that. And the diagnosis shouldn't come. Just because there's a trisomy 19 diagnosis doesn't mean that a kid shouldn't get heart surgery, or just because there's a trisomy 9 diagnosis doesn't mean they shouldn't get monitored. I think there's that weird, and it comes up a lot in the 18 and 13 kids, but you shouldn't just say no to heart surgery because this is a baby with trisomy 18 or a baby with trisomy 13. It should be evaluated under, this is the condition of the heart, this is the child's other condition. Yes, this will work. No, it won't. And I think that bias in the medical field, and that, there's a lot of, oh, well, your baby has this diagnosis, you should choose comfort care, or you should choose this. And that, to me, you should offer that, but you shouldn't be pushing the parents. You should say, these are your options, and this is what we're looking at, regardless of diagnosis, and let the parents choose. And don't lobby the parents for the choice that you would make, just because you would make a choice. Like Alana is not a firm candidate for inclusion. She can do some, but not a lot. But other parents are very gung-ho on inclusion. If you're gung-ho on inclusion for your child, great. I know that my child is not. So I'm going to advocate that way. And I think there needs to be, across all of that, a little more understanding of, just because somebody's diagnosed something doesn't mean they can't do it, or they shouldn't be given the same treatment or the same thing as someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, across the board. I love the inclusion aspect of that, that children, again, the parent, the child, the educator, the doctor, like, let's come to the best solution for that child. And in your case, and what a lot of parents are just asking for is, let's listen to the situation and let's find what's right for that child. So I think that's great. I loved how you talked about early intervention. I have a younger sister and an older sister with trisomy 18, a younger sister with cerebral palsy and hydrocephaly. And I remember as an older brother, the PT and the OT, all those speech therapists. What a wonderful thing that you were able to do and get that early intervention going. Definitely probably made a huge difference, because as you said, the earlier you can kind of start working on either
Yes.
scoliosis or the speech, it definitely it makes a huge difference. And it won't follow a pragmatic order that is documented in most, it's going to be its own journey for each child. So love that. Just great concepts, and just love your overall thoughts. I'd love to just kind of And with some maybe a story or two about, like, when you look at Alana, just, like, what brings you the most joy or excitement, or just
So,
tell me a little bit about tell me
so
as a mom.
I'm gonna
Go ahead.
tell a story that. So I love to travel. I have always loved to travel. I love to travel. I have been all over the United States, not too, but I've been all over. And when they tell you you're going to have a child with a disability, you're like, you're not sure. You're going to just, but we have been able to travel a lot with Alana. She's been going to Disney World since she was 1. She's been going on roller coasters since she was 3. If she's tall enough, she wants to go on it. She went to Cedar Point and she wanted to go on the 14-story tall swings. And my husband's like, no, she's not going on that. Like, she is very much an adrenaline junkie. And I don't think you would think that your disabled child would be like that. She loves all that. And we were fortunate enough a few summers ago to take her to Alaska. So we went on a cruise to Alaska with an organization called Autism on the Seas. It was a great trip. She did much better on the 5-hour flight to Seattle than I thought she would. But like, I think I didn't think when we first got the diagnosis that we'd be able to do some of these things that are important to me or they're important to her. And she likes to do that. It's a long story, but the Autism on the Sea, we're going on our 4th Autism on the Seas cruise later this year. She loves it. Team Orange, they have, it's a whole big thing. But like, she enjoys some of the same things I do. And you don't know, and like Disney and the whole thing, obviously I trained my child to like Disney, but you don't think when they tell you your child's going to be disabled, you don't know, like, well, what does that mean? What are they going to be interested in? What are they going to like? And she does like some of the same things I do, but then there's things that I like that she hates. So you don't realize some of the normal moments that come in, and then some of the like being able to do some of the fun family things and being able to go to, she's able to go on these trips and go on planes and do things that we wouldn't have thought. She also really, the one thing that's interesting about Alana is she gravitates to people. She latches on to people. Like, every summer at camp, she picks her favorite counselor and it's like, the so-and-so, and every morning, where's so-and-so? I want so-and-so. She like latches on. It's kind of funny. And people generally find her entertaining, and they're very nice to her, which, yeah, there've been a few bad situations, but she is very much social, and she raises awareness in ways that people don't think. Like, her first school would have, and her school now does it a little bit, but it's a high school. They would, on March 9th, they would have Trisomy 9 Awareness Day. We would send in treats and everybody would wear purple, and they do, we call it her holiday. So you can raise awareness in ways that you don't think about. And that's been good for her. And she's got this whole group of kids. Like, every time I go to the school, I'm like, yeah, I'm here to pick up Alana. Oh, the one with the glasses. Yeah. The one who doesn't talk. They all know her, everybody. And she goes to her first school was really small. There were probably 40 kids in the whole school. And her new school is like 750. So it's a big school. And they all seem to know her. It's totally different than what I thought it would be when they gave you the diagnosis. And I think in the beginning, there's so much emphasis on the negatives and what they're not going to be able to do. But then you see all the things, well, yeah, she can do this and she can do that. And well, maybe she can't do that like a normal kid, but she can still do it. And she still likes it. And I mean, she is very into, right now, she's very into her pocketbooks. Like, she has to have her pocketbook every day and this and that, like some of the fashion stuff that 16-year-olds get into. And now she has braces, and she has to have pink and purple wires because I asked her, I want pink and purple. Blah, 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 blah. So was she hard to get the braces on? Yes. That was kind of complicated, but now it's like, yeah, I got my braces.
So cute. I've got teenagers with braces on too. So yes, the good, the bad. She fought very hard to not get them on. So it's teenagers. She's a teenager. Your passion is helping others. Let's wrap with a couple of things. One thought is, if a new parent is listening right now, sitting in fear or they're uncertain, what would you want them to hear? What would you like to share
Okay,
with a new
so
family?
here's what I would say. Number one, your life is not over because you have a disabled child. Your life is going to change, but that doesn't mean it's going to be all bad. You're going to meet a lot of people along. Like, I've made a lot of friends through SOF, through other places that I would have never met otherwise, who've been very helpful. Definitely reach out. Like, if they want to reach out to me, fine. You can get me through SOF. You can find me. I will be more than willing to talk to you. Social media. While the internet can be very scary, if you just Google Trisomy 18 or Trisomy 9, that can be really scary. But if you can find the specific things that are maybe on Facebook, through Soft, through Unique, you will definitely get more information from other parents, and find doctors who listen to you. Half the battle is getting a doctor. At least for us, it's been the pediatrician, and I will probably cry when she has to switch to a adult doctor. But find doctors that will listen to you. Give them, if you can find, whether it's the for Soft, they have the expectant parent ones. I don't know if you guys are going to do one for the kids. Unique has one that's like, give the doctors the more current documentation. I mean, the one Unique one, I'm like, oh, I know these kids. Here's this person now in the Soft book. Alana's going to be in it. So it's nice to see that. But find current information, because every single one of our doctors has been very grateful when we've said, here's some information about this. You can put it in her file. Or if you want to talk, like she has seen Dr. Lee, and I'm sure, there's other resources where they can find more information. But I do think getting the right doctor, knowing that your life is not over, it's going to change, and be prepared for that, but know that, and that you're going to have experiences and do things just like every other family. They just might be done in a little different way.
That advice. I love it.
And other local parents. I will say, the other thing I always tell people is, especially for those who live in a more isolated area, local parents can be your best friends, best resource in terms of, what does your state allow? Because in the United States, everything is different. What does your state allow? What acts like, is there a camp? Is there a babysitter? Is there this? Like, what local parents sometimes are the trick. And when you're having a meltdown and you need to talk to somebody, having a local parent, like I met a local parent not that long ago at Starbucks. She's like, you do anything today? You want to come to Starbucks? I'm like, I'm going to do. I think it's a Saturday. Oh, let's go. And we sat and talked for 2 hours about some of the challenges that we both have.
Wonderful. Agreed. Life's going to be different. And for me as a sibling, I'm better for having sisters that had disabilities. Like, I'm a different dad. I did respite. Arizona changed the law, and I was just in college, and I could become my sister's respite provider. And my parents were very grateful. One, they knew the respite provider. We didn't have to do interviews and things. So anyway, just a lot of different resources in every state, everything. And what a wonderful opportunity that you can. Meeting new people, blessing the lives of others is really rewarding. There's just so much to this at the end, but having met Alana, and she just brightens the room, that is the most important thing. It just makes your life better. And so, I love my sisters. Alana, she's one just like them, where she can just bring the light. And so I want to talk a little bit about the lasting legacy. You mentioned Alana. I was just on the new webpage our team built at trisomy.org. There's a new page for trisomy 9, and Alana's with a couple of others, but she's on that home page there for trisomy 9. So she's not just a fun person, but she's a model. The other thing is, we mentioned briefly, but there's a trisomy 9 new and expectant book. It just came out here in January, or right before the end of the year. It got published. And so that's one of those books that, like you were saying, you printed out the Unique pamphlet. I hope, we have links to that article. The more information, the common thread that I've talked to, lots of families now, is they often will bring some of these resources with them. So this book, we hope that you can take it with you. Sorry, I don't have one. I gave my initial
That's okay.
copy
I'll
to
get my
someone.
copy eventually.
Yeah, you'll get it. So I'm holding it like this is the book, everybody. You can see it. But we'll link to the books. But Alana's in there, and you'll actually, you're in there too. You've got your photo in there.
My mom is in there. Yeah.
Yes. So a couple of the photos, all the photos are from kids that belong that are members of Soft. But what were you going to say?
Also say, we have made the deliberate decision that we will put Alana in whatever study we hear about. And one year we were at the genetic doctor, and she handed us a study, and I'm like, oh, Alana's already in that. And she was like dumbfounded. So, we are not just in terms of having this type of conversation and going to Soft. We have put her in multiple studies and multiple things, because you may know Dr. Debbie Brooms. She does the Trish Project. And when I first heard about the Trish Project, I was looking at the studies. I'm like, these are all depressing. And she's like, well, do you want to put Alana in? I'm like, sure. So Alana went in when she was real little. I'm like, well, I'll put Alana in.
I got a link to that one, because that was some I linked in there. So We'll have to link to that one
Yeah,
too.
so that was when Alana was really little. There's probably due for an update, but I was very like we've been trying to put her in the various studies. And I know Soft, the one year in Michigan, did the facial scanning. We put her in that. Chops did one when she had her tonsils out. They approached us in the waiting room. They're like, well, we want to do blood samples of you and her. We're like, all right, fine. So, and now I think the biobank wants us. So we try to put her in everything just because the more information is out there, the easier it'll be for new parents to find better information than what you're just going to internet. Because your instinct is to Google it. And I haven't, what I should do is I should AI it and see what AI comes up with, because God knows what kind of information is on AI. But you don't know sometimes the quality of the information that you're getting in some of these more general searches.
That's exactly my task, is to help change that. That's one of my goals of the last 18 months, is to make sure that you search trisomy 9 or trisomy 13 or trisomy 18, or we'll expand that into other related disorders. But yeah, that's one thing that we're trying to do. And yeah, I look at trisomy, or I look at ChatGPT or any of these AI generative search engines, is kind of the generic term. So I'm excited. I just searched it yesterday, and when we hit publish on the new page that just went live, and trying to tie in the search engine words in the background, the keywords. So yes, this is why we're talking. That's why we need more of Alana's stories, more of Asmin and others. And so you'll see these podcasts get up. Hopefully that adds to it. And then these books and resources. And if we cross link, so that was one thing. I was talking to Chicago, the Children's Hospital in Chicago, and they said, would you be willing to post link to our resources? I said, absolutely. I need everybody. It's the cross link, the SEO, all that. So we're hoping to flood the internet. So, but let's end with this. Let's get more thoughtful on just Alana's. What do you hope for Alana long term? What do you hope her story is? And if you don't mind, just thinking big picture.
No, it's okay. I think, I hope Alana continues to change the perception of trisomy 9 and to help other people, because when people meet her, especially other trisomy families, they realize, oh, it isn't all negative. It isn't all the doctors don't know. And I tell the story that they told us that she was going to be this. As long as she can continue to do that, I think long term, she'll probably live with us, maybe structured employment, but I think she'll have plenty of social opportunities. We live in an area with a lot of that. And as long as she continues to make people happy and educate people, I think that's kind of her purpose in life, is to educate more people and do all of that. And I think that she's helped with family members, she's helped with other people. And I think that's part of why she's very unique, and she's very much a unicorn in many, many ways, and she loves unicorns. So that's kind of, and even helping the teachers, like, oh, this is a kid who doesn't have the traditional autism or whatever. She's done a really good job of teaching people that just because you're disabled doesn't mean you don't enjoy normal things in life, doesn't mean you are limited in what you can do, where you can go. We try to take her all different places. Spent a lot of time as a baby and toddler going to her brother's sporting events and school functions. I'm sure your younger sibling got they get taken along. I mean, she got taken along to stuff. Obviously, when he was older, it was a little different. But yeah, we take her along to things, and I think that's really her. People are drawn to her for a reason, and I think it's to learn more about the whole trisomy community, the whole disability, and that it's not all disabled people are stuck in their house or non-verbal. They all have something to contribute, even if it's in a different way. This is America. Everybody thinks money is how you contribute, but that's not really the only way to contribute in this world.
Agreed. Well said. Alana is definitely contributing. Her smile, her person, her just the vibrant that she brings to life is just wonderful. So yes, and the story and the fact that she's changing the lives of the next generation of children with trisomy 9, her story is going to live on. And we're so pleased that we got a chance to talk about it. I'm pleased I got a chance to talk about it. You help us flood the internet with news stories about children with trisomy. We don't want parents to be searching and only having just the negative or only one set of information. We hope that there's lots of information, lots of viewpoints, lots of comments, lots of stories. So please help us share, repost,
And
like these.
and
Thank you,
check the
everybody.
date on information.
Yes. You mentioned 1983. They gave you a report. I was like, that's the year I was born. That makes me feel real old. And definitely
1983.
don't want to trust anything in 2013, 2010. For
Alana was
or
born in
2011.
2009, and I'm like,
I can't do my
this
math.
from
That's a little bit
this is
old.
from
Yeah.
1983.
You
Yeah,
can't
that was a
trust
lot.
anything that year anyways. I'm one to can confirm that. But yeah, check dates, but help us flood. So everybody listening, if you can like, subscribe, do all that, we appreciate it. Patty, thank you for coming. Thanks for talking. Thanks for sharing Alana's story. And we'll add some pictures to this. But again, what a wonderful time to be just growing and supporting more families. You show that every day, willing to help their neighbors, people on the internet. There is a Trisomy 9 group. So if you are listening to this and you have a
There's
child
several.
with Trisomy 9, please look to join those groups. They're fantastic. They're very kind to me when you guys let me in. So join those, and we hope that you can find the support you need and that we all help change the narrative. So thank you again. Talking Trisomy with Patty Walsh, telling Alana's story. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.